So I am going to start this just by saying I'm obviously not a doctor. I don't have any kind of medical degree. I just love to research things on the internet. So I have spent, I don't know, probably 3.5 years just gradually learning about everything I'm going to teach today. I feel pretty confident in what I'm going to say, but it's your life, it's your body, it's your health. So take what's helpful and leave what's not, and we'll just go on from there. I'm going to read the first part because I think it's pretty important, and then after that it'll be a little more interactive. We have become accustomed to both chronic and non-communicable diseases, as well as acute infections, and think that they are an unavoidable part of the human condition. While the possibility of disease is the human condition, the environment we create in our bodies is what determines if we get sick and how. Obviously, there are some exceptions to this rule. God is sovereign over our lives, and as the great physician, sometimes he heals those who would otherwise die or kills those who would otherwise live. Examples include Hezekiah, who got boils and died as a direct result of God's judgment in his life, the people in Corinth who died because they took communion wrongly, and then the various people who were healed by miracles by Jesus and his prophets. I mean, those things are just God intervening in the natural order that he has placed, but it doesn't refute the argument that there is a natural order. God has given us many ways to avoid suffering in this fallen world that we live in, some through direct intervention of blessing on our behalf, and sometimes through systems of the world he puts in place. If you live in harmony with the natural law, by and large, your life will go well. Men have spent thousands of years seeking out this natural law through scientific study. Civilizations have discovered and lost and discovered again many things over the thousands of years of human history. Because of sin and judgment, we will never know everything we need to know, but we should recognize that such a natural law exists. That understanding gives purpose to our search and hope for discovery. What we will look at today is a small picture of that last natural law. Please believe me when I say that there is so much more that I don't know than that I know. This information is what I have found helpful and uncommon knowledge as I have sought out healing and health for me and my own family. I will try to be very clear about when I am expressing my own opinion about something and when I am teaching verifiable fact. In the papers, and then I have some resources that we'll talk about later. So my hope for today is to inspire you to take responsibility for your own health and to see for yourself that health and healing is possible. Also going to say, if you go to your doctor and ask him about anything that I'm going to say today, he's going to tell you that you're crazy or that I'm crazy or both. I will address that in this talk because I know that's extremely important. We have been told so many things over the last, all of our lifetimes that are healthy, and a lot of those have just turned out to be not true. So we're going to address why those are not true, and if you want to fight with your doctor about that, you can do that, or if you just want to not ever go to the doctor like I do, you can do that too. I started this journey because 2 reasons. I can take him too if I need to. You don't have to go out, Shelly. I can take him. We're not that formal, so if I have to hold my baby during the talk, I think it'll be okay. Parker has struggled with a chronic illness for a really long time. We didn't know what it was, but he was just tired, depressed, couldn't sleep. He was just not healthy, and there was no real specific thing that you could put your finger on it and be like, this is what's wrong with him. But we knew that there was something wrong because he just recently turned 30. There's no reason why he shouldn't be healthy and fully functioning. And so I've always just been trying to figure out what I could do to help him if there was anything. We've tried lots of supplements, we've tried lots of different diets, routines, and all of that, and none of them have ever really seemed to help him until what we were about to try. And then also, after we had our first son, Wyatt, I struggled with getting pregnant. We had several miscarriages right in a row very early. I think what the doctor ended up determining was the fertilized egg just wasn't implanting, and that was because I had improper hormone balance. And so that really made me feel serious because even though I was relatively thin and all of this, I thought if I can't make babies, which is what my body was designed to do, there's obviously something deeply wrong with my body. So that was a second set of motivation to lead me down this path. I have been able to since heal all my hormones, and we get pregnant with relative ease, and I've carried two babies to term, and we just feel very grateful to the Lord for that, but also to Him for showing us this information, like giving us wisdom in our search. It wasn't just, I don't feel like, a random chance. Like we asked the Lord for wisdom, and He gave it to us. So I'm very thankful for those things, and I just want to share this information with you because I feel like it is so helpful. So that's why I'm here. I hope that you guys can learn as much as I have. If you want to go to the next slide, James. There are a lot of things that we've been told, like I said. And if you guys don't mind, we are recording this, by the way, just because there are people who are long distance who wanted to see. So if that influences if you want to talk or not, like, I totally understand. But I thought it would be helpful to, like, not just sit and listen for 3 hours because, like, gross. But if you want to interact, that would be helpful. What are some things that we've been told are healthy? And we'll write them up on the board and then talk about them. What things have we been told we should do to be healthy? Okay, so what are some of those?
Bread, anything baked like that.
Okay. No bread.
I'm supposed to cut out as much fat as
Okay.
like grease, bacon.
Did she mention saturated fat specifically, or just fat in general?
I honestly can't tell you.
Okay.
She said saturated.
Yeah.
I was telling Shelly my paperwork, I was going to bring it, it was laying right at the door.
Oh, that's okay.
It just didn't come up. I told it to you, it didn't come up.
Yeah.
But, let's see, of course, and there's some fruits that not all fruits are equal.
Yeah. Yeah. So the fruits that are higher in sugar, maybe, was she telling you about those?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, so we need low sugar.
Yeah, the perfect diet, if anybody's diet, is low cholesterol, low carb, no salt, sugar-free diet.
So cardboard. Cardboard. Yeah. All right, so no bread, no fat, low sugar. What else? Lots of vegetables. How are we supposed to lose weight? Yeah, don't eat any food at all, right? Like reduce calories, reduce calories, increase movement. So eat less, move more. More. Restrict, right? That's like the word we all think of. Restrict our calories. Restrict. Push back. Oh, I haven't heard that one before. That makes it sound so much more pleasant than it actually is. Like, push back those calories. Oh. Okay. Anything else?
I was told not to eat a lot of beef or chicken or fish.
Lean meats, yes. Lean meats. Especially not red meat. No red meat. Okay? I think that pretty much covers like the general advice. If you think of the food pyramid, there's like your whole grains on the bottom, then your fruits and vegetables. The recommendation, I think, is like 11 servings of whole grains a day, which I don't know if you've ever even tried that, but eating 11 servings of whole grains is like way much. You will feel sick, and you are not going to lose any weight on that. I can just tell you right now, like, that's just not the way. So we are going to talk about these things and see if there's actually any evidence to back them up, what the result has been since this advice has been mainstream. And believe it or not, Americans do follow, by and large, the advice that we've been given by our doctors and how that's worked out for the American people, the Western world in general. So I think I'm ready for the next slide. Okay, these are the studies that have been used to support or prop up this advice that we've been given, and we're going to look at them and see what they mean and if we should be doing what they say. Now, the first one is called the 7 Countries Study, And it was in like 1940, 1950, he was doing the research, and then he published his study. The man was Ansel Keys, and he started the fat is bad for you narrative. He started his human study because they had done a trial on rabbits, which are herbivores. They eat plants. Everybody knows rabbits eat plants. That's their diet. They don't eat snakes or rodents or whatever animals they eat are herbivores. They eat plants. And when you force-fed rabbits obscene amounts of saturated fat, they got lesions in their arteries. And they thought, oh, that must mean the saturated fat causes lesions in our arteries. So they started doing human studies. And he studied 22 different countries and correlated how much saturated fat they ate to how much heart disease they had in their population. And then he published it, but it was called the 7 countries study because he only actually published the information from 7 of the 22 countries that he studied. So that is not good right away. Like if you're going to study 22 countries, we need to know all of the information that you found, not just from the 7 that you preferred. Only you said less than 4% of the people in the study actually got asked what they ate. So I don't know how you're supposed to do a study on what people eat versus the heart disease that they get if you don't even ask them all what they ate. That seems like a big flaw, a big hole in your study. But that's just what he did. That's what he decided, and we'll see exactly why in just a minute. There's this curve. I'm going to try to draw this. He made it look like heart disease is down here, and saturated fat is here, and he drew a curve just like that and said there's a country here, here, here. The more saturated fat you eat, the more heart disease you get. Proven. We all know saturated fat causes heart disease. Fat is bad for you. Fat equals cholesterol. Cholesterol equals plaque. We're all going to die if we eat fat. I just dropped this. Okay, now, James, if you go to the next slide, this is what he actually found. This is the 22 countries. It's scattered. There's no correlation at all. Some countries have heart disease, some don't. Some eat high cholesterol, high fat diets, some do not. This was what he published over here. He left out several key countries who had high saturated fat diets and some of the lowest heart disease rates in the world. So he was definitely cherry-picking data in order to make his point, because he put so much time into this, he just thought, oh my goodness, I can't tell you exactly what he thought, but you can assume he thought, I can't have wasted all this time, there has to be some kind of correlation. And if there's no correlation, there definitely can't be causation. Correlation doesn't equal causation, but you have to have correlation in order to have causation. So this is actually still to this day the main study that is used to prove that fat is bad for you. If you look on the CDC or whatever, the 7-country study, which is just not helpful. Like at best it's not helpful, and at worst it's a lie. So the next is a group of studies published in around the same time, like the 50s, and they said that cholesterol causes heart disease. Just a few years later, they were like, okay, we have this one study we're going to prove. But what those studies failed to disclose was that they were funded by the Sugar Research Foundation. And now, in 2016, we have internal memos from the Sugar Research Foundation, otherwise known as the SFR, and their internal memos from that time saying, oh, we see that there is no correlation between fat and heart disease. There's actually a correlation between sugar and heart disease, but we don't like that because we sell a bunch of sugar, so let's bribe these 3 Harvard professors who are doing this study to suppress all the data about sugar, exaggerate the data on fat, and publish their studies and not tell anyone that we had anything to do with it. That is verifiable fact. One of those Harvard professors that was bribed became the head of the FDA and introduced this whole simple carbohydrate, fat is bad for you narrative. He's the one who published it by the government, and we should be able to trust our government, right? Like, we all know that that's not true these days. But yeah, and since they didn't disclose their involvement, like that's pretty important. The people funding your study, people just thought, oh, Harvard published this. These people are academic. All they care about is the truth. Like they just want to know what is true. But that's just They weren't the one funding it, and the people who were funding it had an obvious agenda, and so they pushed that agenda at the cost of the health of everyone else. Now, this next one is a little bit strange, so I don't think I need another slide. Yeah. The Latter-day Saints. Charlie has a bone to pick with the Latter-day Saints all the time, and now I do too. So here we go. The Latter-day Saints, when they started their denomination, they thought that they had prophets who could receive word from God, and one of those women who thought she was a prophetess, Ellen G. White, thought that she received a vision from God telling her that we were all supposed to be vegetarian. She didn't have any evidence to back this up except for a special revelation from God. Then they found out that when people eat plant-based diets, we know now that it's because of their lack of saturated fat. Their sex drive goes down significantly, and they thought, well, I know that this is graphic, but just bear with me. If we can get people to be vegetarian, then our young children won't masturbate, and they will be sexually pure, and we will have solved sin. They were also extreme advocates for things like female circumcision and male circumcision, because that makes it harder to self-pleasure because you're literally mutilated. I am not a fan of either male or female circumcision, because once you find out the reasons why people have advocated for this in history, it's not ever about the good of the person that it's being done to. It's always about making them somehow morally pure by preventing them to do these things that, you're just not going to cure human nature. People are human, and you can't cure it by chopping off parts of their body. That's just the truth. So they have pushed this vegetarian diet. The Latter-day Saints have. They have also founded all of the nutrition studies programs in all of the top universities in the United States. They funded them all. All of the research that is done these days is funded by the Latter-day Saints and these organizations that they have started. You'll recognize this name. Kellogg was a Latter-day Saint, and he was trying to come up with a breakfast food to replace sausage and eggs, which is making us these horrible sexual people who actually have hormones. And so he tried to replace that with grain and plants. So that's why he created breakfast cereal. And that's why we have breakfast cereal, because somebody was trying to change human nature. Not helpful, and the reason that you don't have sex drives when you're eating plants is because you're dying. That's just the truth. Your hormones die because you're dying. I know that's just not good. They also admitted that their diet was nutritionally deficient in key B vitamins, but they claimed that that was judgment from God because we no longer lived in the Garden of Eden, and you should just suck it up and deal with it. I am not going to do that. I think that that's not the way that God made the world to work. He didn't say, there are foods out there that you can eat that would make you super healthy, but you're not allowed to eat them because I'm punishing you. That's not the way God works, in my opinion. So, that is why one of the reasons why we have highly pushed plant-based diets in the United States, because we have a large corporation of religious fundamentalists who think that they have the right to push their religious beliefs on the rest of the world, even though they have no scriptural or scientific backing in any way, shape, or form, and that you should just do it because they said so. Okay? High cholesterol and long life would be the next point. So I think it's the next slide, James, but I might be wrong. Okay, so we're not quite there yet, but that's okay. There is actually, when you look at the raw data of the studies and not the conclusions that the scientists draw, so when people do a study, they collect all kinds of raw data, and then they interpret it. And what they interpret is put into a study. They can choose to use or not to use any amount of the raw data that they collect. A published study is an opinion or an interpretation of data. It is not data itself. When you look at the actual data, instead of there being a correlation between high cholesterol, high fat diets and mortality, there is actually a correlation between high cholesterol, high fat, and longevity. The people with the highest LDL cholesterol live the longest. Did he just hit his face? Poor baby. So if you have more LDL cholesterol, and that's low density cholesterol, it floats, it doesn't sink. That's why they distinct between the low density and the high density. The more LDL cholesterol you have, the longer life you're going to live. And that's pretty much established fact. It's not when you look at the data, that's just true. He's not having a good day. He'll be all right. Also, statins that are supposed to lower our cholesterol and make us more healthy because they've lowered our cholesterol that supposedly give us heart disease. The average length of life that is extended for people that have high cholesterol and take statins and the people who don't take the statins when they have high cholesterol is 3 days. That is not at all statistically significant. Like, that's a rounding error. In the course of an 80-year life, you happen to live 3 days longer than somebody else who lived an 80-year life. Like, you can't prove anything based on that. Statins do not lengthen your life. They lower your cholesterol, but, like, is that even a good thing? Which we're beginning to find out it isn't really a good thing. And it doesn't even really lengthen your life all that long, like 3 days. Like, I don't know. You just can't even bank on that. That's not something to take to the bank at all. The next thing that we talked about on here was like restriction, calories in, calories out. You just need to eat less, you need to move more. All calories are the same. We've been told that, right? Like, it doesn't matter if you're getting it from pasta and Oreos, or if you're getting it from hot dogs, or if you're getting it from vegetables or from fruits. If you eat 1,300 calories, because you're supposed to be burning, like the average adult female body burns about 2,000 calories in a day. Okay, I forgot to mention it earlier. We can stop at any time for questions. Obviously, we're not that formal, so if you have a question, just raise your hand. We'll get to it. Okay, so the calories in, calories out. Calories is simply a measurement of energy. The way they determine the amount of calories something has is they burn it up in a lab, and they basically see how long it burns, and then they say it has X amount of calories. That is a very simplistic explanation, and it doesn't describe all that it does to our bodies. So different amounts of energy are going to do different things to our bodies. Different types of energy are going to do different things. The nutrients that are in there are going to affect how much of it we burn and how we burn it, if we're even able to burn it. We'll get to more of that later on. So the calories in, calories out narrative leads us to constantly restrict. We're like, well, I weigh this much and I'm eating this many calories a day, so that's obviously too much. I need to eat 200 less calories a day. And then your metabolism, your brain goes, we're not getting as much food. That must be a problem. So we're going to lower your metabolism so that you can survive on this much food. And then you stop losing weight. So you might lose weight for a couple weeks, a month. And then you think, I must need even less calories. So you lower your calories again. And then your brain goes, oh my goodness, we have even less food now. We're really starving. Like, let's lower our metabolism because we don't know how long this is going to last, because who knows when we're going to get food next. Maybe this is a famine. Maybe it's a drought. Your brain doesn't know. It just doesn't know. No matter how much you tell it, it just doesn't know. So all that lowering your calories does is lower your metabolism. You might have short-term success, but you're not going to have long-term success. And then eventually you're going to go so low that you can't go any lower. It's just not possible for your body to be alive on any less calories than you are. And what happens at that point is your brain is freaking out, like fire, fire, fire. You don't have enough food. We don't have enough energy. There must be something wrong. And your subconscious parts of your brain, the more like quote unquote animal parts of your brain, you can't fight those for very long. Eventually, you're going to binge. And that's how you start this cycle of I restrict, and I binge, and then I restrict, and then you punish yourself because you think, if I could just do this better, if I could just be stricter, if I could just eat little enough calories, I could be a good person and lose weight. But that's just not the way our bodies were designed to work. That will deprive you of nutrients, it will deprive you of proper energy for proper bodily functions, and it will make you sick, and it will not lower your weight for any meaningful length of time. So there are two main sources of energy. It's not just a calorie. It can be divided into two types of energy that our bodies can use: lipids or fat, and glucose or sugar. Our body has fat on it, and it also can burn dietary fat. It is not as easy to burn dietary fat for energy as it is to burn glucose. So if you eat fat and carbs at the same time, your body will always choose to use carbohydrates. Also, because I'm going to have to erase some of this to draw a little. Your blood must remain within a very, very tight parameter of requirements in order for you to be alive. If your blood sugar goes all too high, your cells will start getting damaged, and if that's what diabetes is. Your blood sugar is too high for too long, it damages your cells, like your toes you stop regenerating. Like everybody knows what happens to a diabetic. So every time you eat carbs and your blood sugar spikes like this, I keep losing my pens. I know I have them over here somewhere. Here they are. The darker one? Okay. So when you eat carbs, your insulin spikes like that. Big spike, very quickly released into your bloodstream. It has to take care of it right now, or your blood sugar is going to be too high and your body's going to be damaged. So it has two options. Burn it for energy, store it for fat. If you eat more carbohydrates than you can burn for energy within that amount of time before it starts doing damage, your body will immediately store it as fat, whether it's enough calories for the day or not. It's about how much in that short amount of time, not about how much in a long amount of time. If you eat protein, your blood sugar spikes like that. Okay? So much lower, much more extended amount of time. Your gut can't break it down as quickly, so the release is slower. So the same amount of energy is going to be released much slower. Also, depending on your body weight, the first 60, 70, 80 grams of protein that you eat in a day do not go to energy production. It is a building block. It goes to building muscle mass, repairing anything that's damaged. It's a building block. Your protein is a building block. You don't burn protein for energy until you get over 80 to 100 grams, depending on your body weight. So you can eat a lot of protein and be getting next to no energy. It burns it as a last resort, your body doesn't like to do it, not his favorite thing. Fat is like this. Okay? The lowest insulin response of any food that we can eat. It also releases over a much slower amount of time. And when it's burned, it creates something in your body called ketones. So ketones can be created by your liver. Your body creates a small amount of ketones out of your liver because it can convert glucose to ketones. But it just makes it directly out of the fat. It doesn't do the conversion. Your liver can only convert a small amount. So no matter how many carbohydrates you eat, you will only get the same controlled amount of ketones unless you eat fat. Now, contrary to popular belief, your brain does not fuel itself on carbohydrates. That's just a lie. Everybody says you need carbohydrates because your brain's going to starve. That's just not true. Your brain likes ketones for energy. Your brain also has the blood-brain barrier. I think pretty much almost everybody has heard of that. It's something that your brain is very important. So it keeps a lot of things out of your brain that can be in the rest of your body because your brain is much more sensitive to toxins and things like that. One of the things your brain keeps out is insulin. So your blood sugar goes to your brain, and if it's too high, your brain has no insulin to deal with it. That's why you get things like brain fog. It also causes things like dementia, Alzheimer's, because your brain cells are getting damaged by the amount of sugar in your blood because there is no way for it to get the proper amount of insulin into your brain. So your brain thrives on ketones. It does no damage to your brain, and I'll get to this later, but it's just so crazy and important. The only thing that has ever been proven to reverse any type of dementia ever is a keto diet. There is no medication that will reverse Alzheimer's. The best it does is slow your progress, and they can't even guarantee that because who would have known how fast you were going to progress anyway. The only thing that they have ever found that reverses Alzheimer's is ketones because it gives your brain the energy that it needs to think. And if you can't think, then you get Alzheimer's. So those are the two types of energy. So this is glucose. And this is fat. And this also means when you stop eating carbohydrates, we're so afraid of fat. We've just been told forever, like, fat is bad, fat is bad, fat is bad. So we think, I'm eating a lot of fat. And you're eating like this much fat, like 2 or 3 tablespoons, 4 tablespoons, whatever. But in reality, because your body can't burn protein. So if you eat a huge sirloin steak, which is one of the leanest cuts of steak, and it has like a tiny little bit of fat around the edges and like no fat marbling through it or all of that, your body's getting all the building block it needs, but you're going to be exhausted because you have no fat. You have to replace all of the calories that you were eating from carbohydrates with that same amount of caloric value in fat. And when you first start doing it, you think, oh my word, like this is insane. There is no way I need to eat this much fat. But you have to. If you're going to do this, if you're going to feel energetic, if you're going to get the proper things to your brain and everything else where you need, it's just a lot of fat because you can't get energy from protein in the same way that you can get it from glucose and fat. There are certain vitamins and minerals that you can only get from fat. They're called fat-soluble vitamins. A, D, E, and K, those vitamins, are not found in fruits and vegetables, period. There are like precursors to those vitamins, like retinol. People might say, oh, there's tons of vitamin A in carrots, but that's just not true. There's retinol in carrots. And retinol can be converted into vitamin A, but our body is extremely inefficient at doing that, and it requires fat to do that. So you cannot get vitamin A, vitamin D, vitamin K, or vitamin E from anything but fat, specifically saturated fat, which is animal fats, things like butter, fatty meat, pretty much those, butter and fatty meat, saturated fat, all the things that we've been told to avoid. Vitamin D, technically, a lot of it comes from the sun. Like we all know, you get in the sun, you get vitamin D. But your body converts vitamin D into something that we can use through cholesterol in your skin. If you don't have enough cholesterol, it doesn't matter how much sunshine you get, you are not going to get enough vitamin D to be utilized by your body. So fat is extremely important. Like you can't eat no fat. You just can't. And because of its slow insulin release, you will also be full for so much longer because your body doesn't say, I'm hungry when the stomach is empty. Your body says, I'm hungry when it's out of energy. I don't want him to jump off the stage. So we'll talk about this a little bit more in the next talk. But if you eat insulin or glucose, your blood sugar will go up, down, all your energy will be gone. And you can't make the conversion from glucose burning to fat burning very quickly if you've never done it before. So your body, even if you have fat on your body, which everybody has fat stores on their body, your body won't be able to use it because it's so used to burning glucose for energy that it will think, I'm starving. And that's why you get hangry. That's why your blood sugar goes low. That's why you start to be mad and think like, I'm literally starving. Like I can't go more than 2 or 3 hours without food. Like this is but you're not starving. Your body has plenty of energy. You just don't know how to access it. And so that's why you have to eat every 3 hours. But if you eat fat, you can go much longer before your body even runs out of the energy that you ate. And then once it does, it says, I'm hungry, but I've got plenty here on my body. So like, feed me when you get to it, but like, it's not an emergency. And you can go literally hours. Like you shouldn't do this because your body does need energy, but you can go hours or days without food because your body is efficient already at burning fat and using ketones for energy, and so it just uses your fat stores. And like I said, it sends out that signal like, feed me, but, no emergency. You don't get angry, you don't get tired, you just need food. We've talked a little bit about this, but we're still on the calories in, calories out thing. Our weight loss is almost entirely connected to our hormones and not to our calories in, calories out. Leptin is what tells us we're hungry. It's that thing that says, like, we need energy. And so if you're constantly feeding it glucose, your leptin will get higher and higher. There's actually labs that you can do that will tell you your leptin levels. And one of the things that doctors do is if your leptin levels get over a certain point, they say, you can't lose weight. It's impossible for you to lose weight. You need bariatric surgery. Because they know with your leptin levels this high, you will not be able to deprive yourself, because it's like fire alarm, fire alarm. You're starving every time you don't have glucose being released into your system, and there's just no way you're going to be able to counteract that without getting into fat burning, which is why fat burning is so important. You can actually lower your leptin levels by feeding yourself dietary fat. It starts to recognize that it has more sustained energy, and since it can make the shift from your diet to your fat stores more easily, your leptin levels will gradually lower until your body just releases the weight, because it says, okay, I know that we're hungry, but it's going to be okay. And then you gradually lower your leptin levels, and then once your leptin levels get down to a good number again, your body will just start shedding weight like crazy, because it's like, oh, we know how to use this. We're used to burning ketones. We are using ketones. We know how to burn fat, and then it just does it for you. But until your leptin levels are lowered, you will not lose weight no matter how much you restrict. It just doesn't matter. Our circadian rhythm is also extremely important. So the circadian rhythm is basically what tells our body what time of day it is. And that's very important, because your body gets into a routine, and it knows they generally eat about this time. So we're going to start making insulin so that when they are ready to eat and they put food in us, we will be able to release insulin and take care of our blood sugar. I can scoot him back a little bit if it's okay. Yeah. It also tells us, like, your body prioritizes different things at different times of the day. So when we are sleeping, your body doesn't send as much blood to certain parts of your body, because it's prioritizing different things. We need different priorities when we're sleeping. Like, we're not digesting food as much when we're asleep. We're not needing the thinking parts of our brain as much. And so your circadian rhythm knows what you do on a regular basis if you have a good circadian rhythm. And it says, okay, now we need insulin. Now we need energy. Now we need blood flow in these specific places. And that allows your body to function properly. If you don't have your circadian rhythm pretty much locked in, your body is going to be freaking out. Like, I don't know when you're going to eat. I don't know when you're going to go to sleep. I don't know where to send blood. I don't know where to do any of these things. And it just kind of does or doesn't do those things, and you end up suffering the consequences. So it's very, very important to regulate your circadian rhythm, and you can do that by doing two things. One, going to bed and getting up at the same time every single day, whether you can, whether you have to or not. So don't sleep in if you don't have to. Like, obviously I have an 8-month-old, and I can't follow this advice perfectly all the time, because sometimes life is just not like that. But as much as possible, you need to go to bed at the same time every day, get up at the same time every day, and don't look at your phone right away. Don't do anything until you have seen the sun. The sun is what tells your body it's daytime. I need to be getting all these digestive juices churning. I need to be producing insulin. And without seeing the sun, even though you know as a person that it's daytime, your body doesn't know that it's daytime. So it gets extremely freaked out. If your circadian rhythm is off, it's also very important to start seeing the sun set. So I have a personal story of this, which is like super cool. Warren was going to bed at like 11 o'clock, and I didn't like him going to bed at like 11 o'clock because that's just too late. I don't want to stay up that late. So for 3 days, I made sure that when I woke up at 7, I got him up and I took him to the window where the sun was rising up, and I made him look outside. And then about 6:30, because I wanted him to go to bed at 7, I took him outside and I sat him in the front yard and faced him towards the setting sun. And in 3 days, he was going to bed at 7 o'clock. Because the circadian rhythm adjusted to the rising and the setting of the sun, and his body knew what to do. Your body is not trying to sabotage you, but if you don't give it the right information, it cannot do the right thing. So, circadian rhythm. So our leptin and our circadian rhythm, our melatonin, that's why so many people have to take melatonin, because your body doesn't know when it's nighttime, so it doesn't give you the right amount of melatonin. And you actually, when you sleep, that's when you build your body and lose weight. That's why women especially weigh less sometimes in the morning than they did the night before, because you exhale it, you burn the fat, and then it's released through urine the next morning. So if you do not get proper sleep and your melatonin is not correct, then you're going to have a really difficult time losing weight because your body does it in your sleep. You do not lose weight when you're working out. You burn energy, but your body does not recover from that burning of energy until you sleep. And you're never, ever going to run or work out or lift enough weights to lose. Like, have you ever watched the calories when you're running on the treadmill or walking on the treadmill, and it's like 100 calories if you can do it for an hour? It's like, you know how little 100 calories is? It's like, how much do you have to do that in order to burn enough fat to lose weight? You're just never going to be able to do it. You have to just give your body the proper tools to have a properly functioning metabolism, and then your body will just lose it naturally. You don't have to force it when it comes to that. Our hormones are also made from fat. I don't know, it's probably in the next slide, so we'll talk about it more later, but your hormones are made from fat. All your steroid hormones, estrogen, testosterone, progesterone, vitamin D, which it acts in your body like a hormone, even though it's technically a vitamin, melatonin, cortisol, all those things are made from fat. If you don't have enough dietary fat, your body will not make enough hormones, and you will be sick. The next thing we're going to talk about is fruits and vegetables, and this is where I start sounding like a crazy person. So I know that we are all told you need to eat fruits and vegetables. They're low in calorie, they're high in fiber, they have so many vitamins and minerals. If you don't eat fruits and vegetables, you're going to be deficient, and you are going to die an early and painful death. And I don't really feel like that's an exaggeration for what people, like how doctors promote it. The main benefit of fruits and vegetables is fiber, according to the people that think fruits and vegetables are a good thing. Can anybody tell me what the purpose of fiber is? Do you know? What does it do? How? Do you know? Okay, so you know what the purpose of fiber, the way that it's just supposed to miraculously heal all of our ills, it's because you can't digest it. It's because it goes into your gut. I'm not lying. This is what it says in the articles. It goes into your gut, and you can't break it down, and it ferments, and it gets all big, and it scrapes the sides of your gut clean. Now, that doesn't really sound very pleasant to me, nor does it sound like increasing bulk is going to be what helps you with your constipation problem. You can't go to the bathroom, so let's make more poop. Like, that's just, yeah, it is what they tell you, but I don't have the study because I couldn't find the picture, but I know that this is true, and you can look it up later if you want to. They did the whole fiber helps constipation study, and they were like, this many people were constipated, and then we fed them a high-fiber diet, and then the same amount of people were constipated. Like, how does that prove anything? It doesn't prove anything at all. It's just, I don't know how these people think that this is a good idea, but it's just, I don't know. We've just got lost along the way somehow. So that is what the purpose of fiber is. It goes into your gut, and it ferments, and it creates a small amount of short-chain fatty acids, which we do need for energy, but you can get them much more efficiently from animal foods like saturated fat and protein. And it ferments, which is what causes you to bloat. It what gives you gas. Did you know that if you do not eat fiber, you will not have gas? Like, ever. So that's a plus. Like, just aesthetically, I mean, that's a plus, in my opinion. Yeah, no, we never do, but now we can actually never do. Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah, it does. It does. It literally swells. Like, you know what fermentation is? Like, everybody who's seen like sourdough or beer, fermentation is a bunch of gassy bubbles. And that's what fiber does in your stomach because you cannot break it down. We do not have the proper organs in our body to break down fiber. Fiber is eaten by things like gorillas and cows, and we all know the animals that eat copious amounts of grass and leaves, and they all have different organs than we do. So cows and other ruminant animals have 4 stomachs, and they digest a little bit of fiber, and then they throw it up and chew it again, and then they digest it again, and then they throw it up and chew it again, 4 separate times. We don't have the organs to do that. Other animals have something, nobody knows this for sure, but it's like a prolonged appendix. It's like 6 to 8 feet long, and their fiber goes in there, and it breaks it down, and they have different gut flora in there than we have. We just don't have it. And it breaks it down into a substantial amount of short-chain fatty acids. Then it comes back out into their small intestine, and then the small intestine uses the short-chain fatty acids, large intestine, just like us. But we just don't have the proper organs to digest fiber, and even the people who promote a high-fiber diet recognize that fact. They just say we should eat it anyway. As far as increasing bulk and like the whole scraping the sides clean, instead of just cleaning you out, it actually damages your gut because your gut is lined with mucus. And when it's extremely full and like expanding because of the fermentation, it scrapes the mucus off of the sides of your gut lining and gives you leaky gut, which allows your food to escape into your bloodstream before it is properly digested and gives you things like environmental and food allergies. Leaky gut is a very big problem. So, as far as all these things that we've been told, bread is also huge in fiber and glucose. Like it's just sugar and fiber, essentially, is what it is. So we're not supposed to eat bread, so that's one thing that we got right. No fat is an absolute no-no. You cannot live and thrive without fat in your diet. Low sugar is good. Lots of veggies, bad. Calories in, calories out, eat less, move more, it's never going to work. Restricting your diet is never going to work. Lean meat is never going to work because you're not going to get enough energy. You're just going to be starving for energy, and eventually you will break. And then red meat is the fattiest meat that we have access to. Ruminant animals with high fiber, like they eat all the fiber. I shared this meme, I don't know if any of you saw it, but it was like, you want to know like the best way to convert fiber into energy? Put it in a cow and eat a steak. Like, you can't do it yourself, so let the cow do it, and then you eat the cow, and everybody's happier. You don't have a leaky gut, and the cow is a happy camper. So we should be eating lots and lots of fat, lots and lots of meat, limited fruits and vegetables, and anything that spikes our glucose like this, we should be very, very careful of. In moderation, there is some fat in that. So dark meats, like dark meat chicken, will have more fat in it than like chicken breast. Always eat the skin. Don't ever take the skin off of your chicken. Like, eat that, you need that, it has a lot of fat in it. I know, it's like everything we've been told, and it feels crazy, because you're like, am I the one who doesn't know, or is it everybody else? So we will talk specifically about what I recommend and what I think is most healthy as far as like diet in the very last talk, but I just wanted to dispel some of the myths in the beginning. Like this is why we have the information that we've been given, this is what the information means, and it's not really that accurate. I also want to address real quick some of the most common objections to the keto diet or the carnivore diet, because people do not care what you eat until you start to eat healthy. And then they try to tell you you're going to kill yourself. That is true. Like, I don't know why people do that, but it's like you can go to McDonald's every day and no one's ever going to say anything to you. And the minute you start a diet, they're like, well, don't you know? Don't you know? Don't you know? It's like, are you? Just leave me alone. Parker and I started working out one time, and everyone was like, you're going to ruin your knees. Well, if I'm fat, I'm going to ruin my knees too. Like, So, as soon as you tell people that you're doing this, they're going to come up with this whole list of objections, because that's what people do, and it's on the internet, and everybody has seen these things on the internet, and so they're just going to tell you these things. So I'm just going to tell you right now why those things are not true. So if someone tells you these things, you can just, according to your mood or how well you know them, either tell them that they're wrong or just be like, oh, that's nice, and do whatever you want anyway. I obviously don't use that very often because that's just not who I am. Keto, let me erase this because I think we're pretty much done with this. keto is going to tank your thyroid. You need carbs to feed your body. Your brain can't live without carbs. Didn't you know that? That's like the thing. And your thyroid or your energy will go down if you eat this keto diet. So you're not going to have any energy and you're going to give yourself thyroid problems. That's one of the biggest concerns that people have with the keto diet. That is just not true. It's an uninformed opinion because the only evidence they have of that are studies that referenced an 800-calorie diet. And they said, well, your thyroid energy levels went down because you didn't have carbohydrates. No, it's because you were eating 800 calories. Like, 800 calories is just not enough for your body. I don't care what you're giving it. You could eat 800 calories of bread or 800 calories of meat, and it's just not enough. And your thyroid will respond to that by lowering your metabolism and getting thyroid problems. So it's not the keto, it's the under-eating that causes thyroid problems. Once the calories in that 800-calorie study were raised, everybody's thyroid went back to normal. You can repair your thyroid. You might initially gain weight if you start eating more, if you've been like restricting for a long time and like eating 800 calories, and then you start eating a proper amount of calories because your metabolism is so slow. You might initially gain a little bit of weight, but then your body will go, oh, we have energy, and it will slowly start like ramping up again, and then your thyroid will return to normal, the stress levels in your body will go down, and you will be just fine. So it is not keto or quote-unquote restrictive diets. It's calorie restriction that kills your thyroid. They also talk about how cortisol affects your thyroid. When you start going from a high glucose diet to a high fat diet, your cortisol levels, which is your stress hormone, does rise temporarily. It's because your body can't burn fat right away, so it's like scrambling around like, oh, what am I going to do, what am I going to do? And then it starts to learn to burn fat, and when it learns to burn fat efficiently, then your cortisol levels go back down to normal, and you have no more problem. And then the beauty of it is you are now something that's called metabolically flexible, which means if you so desire, you can have some glucose and your body will burn it, and then it will seamlessly switch to burning fat. That's called metabolic flexibility. Ironically, metabolic inflexibility or metabolic dysfunction was the #1 comorbidity with COVID. If you were metabolically inflexible, you got COVID worse and were much more likely to die because your metabolism is a sign of health in your body. And it was just the thing that they could pinpoint, that if you didn't have a healthy metabolism, that was your #1 comorbidity. What other objections were we going to talk about? We already talked about the brain and ketones. Yes?
I always hear that people that do like keto diet, if they eat like if you cheat like one day or even just one thing, it just like tanks it completely and you feel awful.
It depends on the type of person you are and how far along you are on your healing journey. So if you are someone who has a really dysfunctional relationship with food and you binge a lot and you restrict a lot, if you cheat, it's likely to put you on a tailspin. And it will be difficult to have one thing. You also, when you go keto, your body starts producing less insulin because it doesn't need as much. So when you eat some carbohydrates, it doesn't have those same insulin reserves that it did before. So it takes a little bit longer for it to take care of your blood sugar. And that's why you get things like a headache and you feel a little bit crappy. It's not because there's something wrong with you. It's because your body just didn't have enough insulin. But if you eat carbohydrates for a few days, your body will just start making more insulin and then you'll be fine. And it's not doing any actual like damage to you. It's just a difference in energy burning. So that's why you feel bad. So a lot of people who can stick to it are under eating, #1. So if you feel the need and the urge to cheat, it's because you're not eating enough fat and you're not eating enough protein and your body is telling you like this is just not enough. And then when you do cheat, your body likes that because it's giving it what it needs. But if you give it enough of what it needs on the keto diet, you won't feel the urge to cheat as much. And then if you do cheat, it's not any damage. You're just knowing. It's like if you drink and you get a hangover the next day. You know that's going to happen and you chose to do it anyway. You can choose to do that if you want, but you just know you're going to feel a little bad in the process. Does anybody else have any like common objections that they hear about like the keto diet? So there's almost no such thing as keto fruit. That is a marketing ploy. Keto flu. Keto flu kind of goes into what we're going to talk about next, which is toxins. Have anybody ever heard of like phytonutrients? It's another one of these key benefits of plants that we're all supposed to be getting. And the reasoning that they have is, well, there's a little bit of toxin in a plant. Everybody knows there's toxins in plants. That's why we don't eat any and every plant, because we know that there's toxins in plants. But we've decided that these certain plants are safe, the fruits and vegetables that we all eat, but they all have a small amount of toxin in them. And when you go keto, you generally increase your fruits and vegetable intake by a substantial amount, because most people don't just go full meat, they go meat and vegetables. And when you do that, your body gets inundated with the toxins, and it creates the keto flu. So if you go full carnivore and don't eat vegetables, you are much, much, much less likely to experience the keto flu, except for in some circumstances that I will talk about later. So keto is fat burning. The keto flu is what you experience when you start doing keto and your body is dealing with all the extra toxins from the vegetables. Okay, so talking about toxins, this is one of the things that we've been told they're safe, that they are not bad for us, that they are just a part of life. But the reality is these things are part of what's killing us and making us very unhealthy. There's a few big ones. One of them is the phytonutrients in plants. Phytonutrients are actually extremely dangerous in large amounts, and we'll talk about that more later. Phytoestrogens. Phyto means like anti. So phytonutrients, it's an anti-nutrients. Phytoestrogens, it's like a fake estrogen. It's not real estrogen, but it comes into our body and our body receives it like estrogen, and it thinks it's estrogen, but it's really, really not. So phytoestrogens are found in birth control, plastic, our water system, and some plants. Like soy has large amounts of phytoestrogens in it. And the problem with that is our cells have only so many estrogen receptors in our body. So if we take birth control, or any form of birth control that is at all hormonal, is going to have the estrogen in it. That's how it keeps you from ovulating and keeps you from getting pregnant. The phytoestrogens will bind to your estrogen receptors, and then your real estrogen will not be able to bind to those receptors, and it will disrupt your hormones. So the birth control is a big culprit, especially for women, and then it creates all kinds of other problems, which we will talk about a little bit later. Phytoestrogens are in plastic, so if you microwave anything plastic, if you leave a plastic water bottle in the car and it gets hot, that releases the phytoestrogens into the food, and then you ingest it. There's also phytoestrogens in our water system, because women take birth control, and then they use the bathroom, and then it goes into our sewer system, and the filtration system does not take out the estrogens. So if you drink tap water, you are getting estrogen, fake estrogen, in your body. I know, it's gross. Also plants, like soy. There are some amount of phytoestrogens in plants. They take up our receptors. Okay, so PFAAs is the next major toxin that we've been told is safe but is actually killing you. So a PFAA is called a forever chemical because your body doesn't really know how to get rid of it on its own. So once it's in your body, it's just kind of in there forever. It is found on things like nonstick pans, in your furniture, in anything that has that new smell, your furniture, your carpet, your new car, anything like that. Though that smell is PFAAs. They have been proven in court in very, very large lawsuits to cause extreme damage to the human body. Birth defects that are like just horrific. And they give you cancer, and they're very, very bad for you. We obviously cannot avoid them at all avoid all of them without just I don't even know how you could avoid them all, honestly. But it's important to do your best to avoid the ones that you can. So, don't use nonstick pans. Just don't use them at all. Just because if they get scraped at all, which they will do, that stuff will come off in your pan and go into your food, and then you will eat it. they're lying to you. So unless it's ceramic, stainless steel, or cast iron, what they say is this doesn't cause damage, but that is a lie. They have some kind of pull in the government and they get to label it as safe, but it's not. So there's only 3 safe types of cookware: ceramic, stainless steel. I always use cast iron because that's my preferred, especially really for cooking meat, which is what we cook most of. So we just use cast iron skillets. And then mold. So mold is a big one. In the 1970s, when they discovered chemicals and they were like, oh, all chemicals are good and all natural things are bad, they created fungicides. And fungicides caused black mold to mutate and become like 10 times more deadly than it used to be. That's why, yes, we've had mold through all of human history, but the specific type of black mold that we have today is not the same as the black mold that we've always had, and it is extremely toxic and extremely deadly. We live in Indiana, so pretty much everyone has black mold in their house. What? Yeah, almost every house in Indiana has black mold in it because we live in a wet and humid environment. And if your house gets water damaged at all and it doesn't dry out completely within 24 hours, your house is water damaged and it now has mold. There are ways that you can remediate that, and like some people can live in that just fine if they get like air filters and things like that. Other people have something like gene mutations that allow them to not detox the mold, and then it just stays in their body and gets recycled and recycled and recycled, and then they get very, very sick. If you think that's your problem, I can direct you to some like people who are actual doctors who can help you heal that. You're never going to get better on your own, no matter what diet you follow. You need prescription medicine that will flush the mold out of your body. But mold is not safe. And spraying it with bleach does not kill it. It just doesn't. It actually, it makes it detach from its surface and float in the air, which is actually worse because then you're breathing it in. So it's just, yes.
I just read an article on it.
Oh, really?
It's that it's rid of it better than bleach and it's not as toxic.
I don't know exactly if white vinegar kills black mold. I just don't know. So I would have to look into that before.
It just said mold.
Yeah. Yeah. So before we finish this first talk, there are a couple of slides that I want to look at. So we know that Ansel Keys released his study in like 1950. And all these dietary recommendations started to come out around that time, 50s and 60s. Low fat, high fiber, lots of fruits and vegetables. Don't eat saturated fats, so cook with things like canola oil and vegetable oil and all these things, and you will be healthy and you will feel amazing. And everybody did it. Surprisingly, Americans follow this advice way more than you would think looking around because we're obviously struggling with health. Everyone is. This is chronic disease rates in the United States. So chronic disease is something that is not infectious, so something that you don't get from germs. Any disease that you don't get from a germ is called a chronic disease. This right here is 1940, and that is 2020. That's not good. The next slide, James, if you don't mind. Cancer prevalence, 1975. And that 2020 is like right here. This is a projection up to 2040, but that's a pretty significant increase. And then the projection is even more. The next slide, diabetes, 1960, 2020. And then the next one. This is how we know that the dietary advice is just not working. Animal foods have stayed relatively, like we eat roughly the same amount of meat, but our consumption of plant foods has increased significantly. So it's not the fact that we're not following the advice. The advice is just bad. And you don't know better until you know better. And why would you think your doctor was telling you something that wasn't going to make you better? So you can try and try and try all you want, but you're just not going to get better by increasing your plant food consumption and decreasing your animal food consumption. It's just not going to happen. You're just going to get more sick, and you're just going to think that you're a failure. But you're not a failure. You've just been given bad advice. Is there another slide on there? Okay, I thought that was the last one. So that is the end of the first one. It took a little longer because of Warren's fiasco. But that is the end of the first one. We can take a quick break, go to the bathroom. I'm going to get some more water, and then we will come back and talk about what this has done to our bodies.